Joe Alterman is a jazz musician and has released 8 critically acclaimed albums. He is also the host of The Upside of Jazz on Atlanta's WABE NPR station. Beyond the piano, Joe is the executive director of Neranenah, an Atlanta-based concert and culture series celebrating Jewish contributions to music and the arts. Jennifer Bardi is Moment's deputy editor. Her reporting has been recognized by the Washington, D.C. chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists and by the American Jewish Press Association. Prior to Moment, Jennifer was managing editor at Spirituality and Health magazine and served for 14 years as editor-in-chief of the Humanist magazine. Joe and Jennifer are the editors of Soundtrack 250, the music that makes America sing. Please welcome Joe Alterman and Jennifer Bardi.
So thank you, Suzanne, and welcome, Joe. It's great to be
Oh,
with you.
you too.
Yeah, long time no chat. We spent a lot of
I
time together
know.
over the last month, virtually putting together the soundtrack. And
I'm so proud of it. Yes.
and yeah, I encourage all our Moment Live viewers and Moment readers to check it out. It's basically 25 songs, although there are extras on the playlist. But we look at 25 songs that we picked, and we can go into why we picked them, that somehow contribute to the story of America.
hmm
And so, these are songs to listen to, but they're also stories to kind of grapple with and to hear. So I thought we could start, Joe. You wrote some of the entries in the soundtrack, and then also you wrote the you were co-editor with me, and then you also wrote the intro. And
hmm
I mean, initially you had titled it "Why Music." And so I thought we
Mm.
could start. Maybe I'll just ask you that. Why did Moment decide to kind of cover America's 250th through music?
Yeah, well, I thought it was important to clarify that the reasoning behind that because some people might not know, but I guess to me, when I think of music and especially the stories and the songs that we picked and shared and told in this issue, they really reflect the whole. These songs really reflect the story of America over the past 250 years, like the good and the bad and everything. And it also they really reflect the Jewish story in America as well. I mean, there's so much in this music and the stories that we share that reflects on, to me, how that that for the most part at the beginning of the 19th century or the 20th century, Jews were coming to America and they were finding themselves able to be citizens of this country and to be a part of it. And whereas in many of the places in Eastern Europe where many Jews came from, they were not allowed to have citizenship and they never felt like they belonged. So you can really feel in a lot of these songs this kind of longing to belong and similar, other kind of Jewish themes like social justice and things like that. So I think for a Jewish publication to tell the story of America and Jews in America, it felt like music was the perfect way to tell that story and celebrate this milestone.
Hmm. And of
Yeah.
course, Moment in 2020 had done the soundtrack of the Jewish people, which
hmm
we were kind of using that as a model, but that was really looking at music that is Jewish,
Right.
that is seen as particularly Jewish. And so this was a little bit different. We wanted to tell the story of America, like you said.
hmm
But we decided to kind of lay these parameters, which is these are all songs. And in the case of Lincoln Portrait, this is an orchestral composition, but
hmm
they're all pieces of music that were written, either the lyrics and or music by Jewish artists.
Yes. hmm
And so, so that kind of informed how we picked. And then, of course, we had to narrow down quite a bit.
Getting to
But
25 songs is a tough task. Yes.
well, yeah, and I think lists are fun. I think people like lists, but they also like lists because they like to argue with lists. And
Right.
so that's I think something that as people read this, we're encouraging people to kind of weigh in on who we missed, and we've already heard, a little bit. And so I think we will. Let's get into that a little later of
Yeah.
who didn't make it, and there are complex reasons. Sometimes we just didn't find the right person to talk, the right expert, to
Totally.
talk.
Yeah. But I
Um,
think we should at least clarify that this is not the list of the 25 greatest song. We're not saying it like that. Yeah. We're
and
sharing certain
yeah,
stories.
and I
Yeah.
think as people read the piece and listen, I mean a lot of these songs were hits. I mean, so we did kind of I kind of had this mantra as I was trying to explain to people that these are patriotic, iconic and or culturally relevant songs that somehow contribute to the story of America, kind of like the sort of immigrant story you were talking about,
Hmm.
or tap into the zeitgeist at a particular time. So
Hmm.
one other clarification is, like you said, I mean, this isn't a lot of, I'd say roughly, wouldn't you say it's kind of like 1920s? I think the earliest song on the list, what is it, Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
I think so.
So that's
I
like,
actually, yeah,
you should
1908.
have right here.
Yeah.
But it's kind of roughly 1920s to 80s, I think, kind of is the major span.
Yes.
And so before, I want to ask you about some really specific songs, because I think some of the entries you wrote are some of my favorite, and kind of gave me chills reading them.
Mm.
But so when we talked about the title of this, we were, the working title was sort of Jewish Contributions to the Soundtrack of America. And some of the other, we started to brainstorm. There's music that holds America together, music that brings
Mm.
America together, music that build a new world, timeless music written and composed by Jews. And so when we hit upon this
Mm.
idea of song music that makes America sing,
Mm.
um, I just wanted to touch a little bit on that idea of singing, because,
Mm.
as a verb, I mean, to sing, of course, is to like vocalize in song,
Mm.
but it is also to make something sing. It's sort of like to make it soar, to
Right.
elevate it, to inspire.
Mm.
And then there's this third definition of sing, which is, like the canary sing, like to snitch, essentially kind of expose something. And I think that's a really
Yes.
interesting aspect of this. And so I wanted to ask you about, some of the songs you've written about in this that you think kind of tell a truth about America.
Definitely. Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm a pianist too, and I remember as a kid, it was never just play the notes. It was always okay. You could play the notes, now make them sing. In this case, I think a lot about when I think about the Jewish involvement in American music, and I often think about how basically there was a 17-year period between the installation of the Statue of Liberty and then putting Emma Lazarus's poem on the Statue of Liberty. She was a Jewish socialist, really. But her, and before the poem was put on the statue just symbolized a friendship between France and America. And then they put the poem on, and all of a sudden, and the poem was really reflecting Emma Lazarus's Jewish social justice beliefs, and all of a sudden the not only the view of the statue changed, but the entire view of the entire country changed. It was like now a place that reflected everything that's said in that poem. So to me, when I think of Jewish contributions or Jewish involvement or Jewish participation in American music, I feel like, you know uh, Jewish involvement in American music and Black involvement in American music. Without those two communities, it's like America without the poem on the statue. And I think what they both, and I have to think a lot about why those two communities come together to create so much great music. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that both cultures' music, the goal is not precision; it's really to tell the truth. And there's a great quote where Bob Dylan was asked one time, basically to defend his voice. Like, what does he say to people who says he has a bad voice? And he said that weird question, I know, but he had a great answer. And he said that he was hanging out with Sam Cooke, and he remembered someone complimenting Sam Cooke and saying something like, "Sam, you have the most beautiful voice." And Sam Cooke responded by saying, "Thank you, but you should not judge a voice by its quality. Rather, you should judge it by how much it's convincing you that it's telling the truth." And I feel
Mm,
like with Black music and Jewish music, which eventually became American music in a lot of ways, it's about the truth. It's not about, if you listen to American Idol, I can watch, and there's certain singers you'll hear that will make you focus on the acrobatics of what they're doing.
hmm
And there's certain singers who just will make you, they might be doing a lot of acrobatics, but they're going to make you focus on the words. It's like you're hearing the song for the first time. And so to me, when I hear a singer like Billie Holiday, she really evokes all of this. To me, she makes us, like, a lot of times she'll say a word that might be one syllable, and she'll make it kind of three syllables, and that's a very Jewish and Black thing. Well, she'll go, she'll kind of rise to the note and then fall to the note, whereas like in other cultures, it's hit the note right in the center, if that makes sense. But
hmm
so this kind of leads to, it's all about telling the truth, and I think Billie Holiday represented that so beautifully. And so when we get into what we're talking about in this issue, I think Strange Fruit is a wonderful story to share. And I mean, basically, Strange Fruit was written by a Jewish school teacher in the Bronx at the time. His name was Abel Meeropol, and he was actually a very dedicated kind of socialist. He actually adopted the children of the Rosenbergs after their parents were executed, and he wrote this poem, Strange Fruit, based on a photograph of a lynching in Marion, Indiana from 1930. And he really wanted to get the song to Billie Holiday. He did, but her record label at the time, Columbia, one of the non-Jewish owned record labels, did not want to touch the song. They said that a song about lynching was too dangerous for business, and they just were not going to have anything to do with it. So she went to her friend Milt Gabler, he was Jewish, and he ran Commodore Records, and she sang it to him a cappella in his office one night, and he just the story was that he just said, "I don't care if we make a dime. We got to release this." So he worked out an arrangement with Columbia Records, and they put it out on Commodore. At the end of the 20th century, that became Time Magazine called it the song of the century. But what's so special about that song is that it was dangerous it was, as Columbia was, they thought it would be bad for business. A lot of times when she'd go play places, she was so proud of that song, but people didn't want her to play it. She'd often be forbidden from playing it at certain venues. But in New York City, at Cafe Society, which was owned by a Jewish guy named Barney Josephson, and it was actually the first integrated nightclub in the city, he not only let her play it, but he made it a part of her performance every time she was there. The show closed with Strange Fruit, and he made it so during that song, there would be no serving of food or drinks. There'd be like a single spotlight on the stage, and she would sing the song, and there would never be an encore. So I think it's amazing that he kind of designed this experience for the first integrated club that people would go back out into America, usually often, especially that time in America, that probably wasn't ready for this song with that stuck in their head. So it's just, to me, it's amazing that these three white Jewish guys were like the vehicle to get out this song that became, I mean, it's Billie Holiday's song now. Abel Meeropol wrote it, but it's Billie Holiday's song. And so I just
Yeah.
think that's such a special, powerful way to talk about, the two communities really coming together to create something that's really uniquely American.
And so this is just a little shot from the actual print layout, and this doesn't really do the entire design justice. I do want to give a quick shout out to our amazing graphic designer Erica Cash for her design of the whole symposium. But I think I'm just going to read. Well, Joe, you just described that, but Joe's writing in this for our listeners. You got to read it, but. He says at Cafe Society, Josephson made sure Strange Fruit always closed holidays set. The waiters stopped serving. The room went dark except for a single spotlight on her face. There was no encore. Josephson wanted the audience to leave America's first integrated nightclub with that song as the last sound, the last image, the last feeling they carried out into the night. But that was the paragraph, Joe, that always gave me chills every time I was editing.
Me too.
Just that imagery, the waiters stopped serving, and
right.
So these are the kind of stories that we're telling in this symposium, and so that was one that was new to me about the role that these three Jewish people played in. And like you said, you can't discuss that song without discussing Billie Holiday. It's her song,
right? Totally. And I also learned, just real quick, that in that song, that there was a movement of Jewish poets up north who wrote Yiddish poetry about black lynchings in the South. So I just wanted to add that was just one of them. There were many back then. It was kind of a thing.
Yeah. And then I think, kind of on this, while we're on the topic of kind of the sort of the tensions and connections between Black and Jewish music makers, there are other examples in the symposium that are kind of in a different way. I mean, like, I guess I'm thinking of Old Man River and Summertime too, but where you had Jewish songwriters who were very interested in telling kind of the story of the Black experience. I mean, putting it into an opera,
right?
And doing their best, but kind of like it was seen as a little bit inauthentic, I think, right? When Old Man was it. Old Man River?
It was Old Man. Yeah, it's interesting because so I mean, and this all to me goes back to something that's super fascinating is that when most immigrant groups came to the United States, they aspired to be like the WASPs and wanted to move into WASP neighborhoods. And but
Hmm.
Jewish, immigrants moved to black neighborhoods. They were more associated with that community. And so basically, yeah, where the black musicians created the swing feel in the music. That's the thing that just makes you snap your fingers or tap your feet.
Hmm.
That was a unique feeling in music that Americans brought to it and black Americans brought to it. But then these Jewish lyricists who lived in black neighborhoods, they created the swing feel in the words. And they basically did that by writing how they heard people talking in their neighborhoods. So,
Hmm.
as much of the music in America before Jewish lyricists became involved, it was kind of imitating British music. And this was really the first music that was really truly American. And it was because it was reflecting how people actually spoke in America. And it was often how black communities spoke in America. And that said, so George Gershwin goes on to write Summertime. And Jerome Kern goes on to write Old Man River. And it's interesting because they both were hugely popular, but and Summertime is fascinating because I don't think there's any song in history that I've heard done in so many different genres. I've heard it done in operas, in jazz concerts. I've heard it done heavy metal, and it's still a song that's sung often. But it's basically both of those songs are told from the perspective of a black performer. Summertime is I think it's a mother kind of character figure talking to a baby, and Old Man River is that, and Old Man River is more of a worker talking to an audience, and
Hmm.
and that's where the whole thing gets a little tricky because basically Jerome Kern, and so what's fascinating here is Jerome Kern wrote Showboat and he wrote Old Man River for Paul Robeson to sing. Paul
Hmm.
Robeson fell in love with music coincidentally when he was a kid and would go to the synagogue where Jerome Kern's grandpa was a cantor. It's just kind of bizarre.
Hmm.
But yeah, Jerome Kern, he writes Old Man River, and it's kind of people don't really touch that song anymore, and it used to be very popular. But what really bothers people about that song is that it's told from the perspective of a black man kind of complaining in a way to a white audience, and they didn't people did not like that image, including Paul Robeson. So there's he changed some of the lyrics to make it less to make it more. I'm blanking on the word at the moment. I know I put it correctly in the issue if you read the issue, but yes, but the way that he made it was
Oh, I
can
know
I
what you're
just find
talking about,
it?
actually.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm blanking on the word.
well, I don't know
Can I?
the exact word, but because Old Man River was Jerome Kern, but lyrics by Oscar Hammerstein.
Right,
Um,
right.
and
Hmm.
I mean, not to criticize Hammerstein, but
Hmm.
he had written, the line "get a little drunk and you land in
That's it.
jail," and then Robeson had changed it to "you show a little grit and you land in jail." So kind of changing the power, the
Yes, and
agency
it's
there a little bit.
yeah, and it's really the next sentence. In Hammerstein's version, the man gets into trouble through weakness. And then
Hmm.
in Robeson's version, he gets into trouble for standing up for himself. I think that's the
Yeah,
difference. That's a big difference.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, and
and
yeah,
and
Summertime doesn't seem to have those issues. But sorry,
like
yeah.
it's interesting how these songs. I mean, so doing this project, of course. I learned a lot about songwriters. I mean, through different eras. I mean, in some cases, you had people writing, Jewish songwriters writing songs for other people, specifically for other people for a certain
Mm,
show. Um, Later on in the symposium, as we get later on, we get artists, Simon and Garfunkel and Carole
mm,
King and Bob Dylan, who they're writing for themselves. I mean, then they're
right.
performing the songs, um, but with some of these songs, maybe they were sort of standards, and then you have the way someone interprets it.
Hmm.
And so I know early on you had suggested "Happy Days Are Here Again,"
Mm,
thinking of the version that Barbara Streisand sang. Because it's like there's something melancholy about it, right?
right. I love
But
the like. Oh, sorry. No, no.
well, yeah, maybe talk about actually. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about Julie Banco and because she was the person who wrote about it in the issue and
Oh
um,
yeah. Yeah, well, Julie Benko is fantastic. She's was recently in Funny Girl. One of her first roles was Barbara Streisand's role in that show. But yeah, she wrote beautifully about the song, and yeah. For me, I mean, I had never heard that. I'd heard that song a million times, but I never really heard that song until I heard how it was portrayed in Marvelous Miss Maisel. It felt like it was written for that scene, and it's fascinating hearing Streisand's version because it's Happy Days Are Here Again, but it's yeah, it is a very melancholy. It's a version of that piece. So
Mhm.
it's the dichotomy of the two is
Yeah.
pretty fascinating. But yeah, Julie. I mean, Julie did write very beautifully about it. I would definitely recommend
Well,
that
and
people explore.
she
Yeah,
writes about it's almost like Barbara Streisand's interpretation was the how it was intended almost. I mean, so that
yeah.
song "Happy Days Are
Hmm.
Here Again," it was FDR's like campaign song, and but it
Mm,
was a depression. It was a depression era song that was intended to lift people up and make people, to kind of, lift spirits because people were
yes.
depressed and living through the depression. And
Mm,
so Barbara Streisand's interpretation, which Julie talks about, was kind of authentic. And then also Julie talks something I had never heard before was this duet that Barbara Streisand
mm.
did with Judy Garland, kind of a mashup where Barbara Streisand was singing "Happy Days Are Here Again" and then Judy Garland was singing "Get Happy." Um, and yeah, so that was a cool discovery to
Totally.
discover.
And same composer did both. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
on our, like, if people go to the YouTube playlist that we've also put together, there's a Spotify list and then YouTube. So with YouTube, you can actually see them singing that duet.
wow.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Well, people should check
So,
that out for
so
sure.
what, Joe, so let's like, what are some other songs in the symposium that touch on other aspects of the American story?
Well, so yeah, I mean, there's a few. I think "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime" is a huge deal, and because there's it was really "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime." The lyrics were written by Yip Harburg, and he wrote the lyrics to "Over the Rainbow" as well. He created the whole rainbow concept in Wizard of Oz that wasn't in the book. But he with "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime," it's really the story of builders building a city or building a tall building, and then the building's built, and they can't afford to go to any of the places that they had just built. And so it was really like the first social justice kind of soul song in American music. It was the first song that spoke about things like that. And it really was the first precursor to powerful songs like Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. So it really kind of set that example. I think
Mhm.
that's huge. I think, I mean, there's something important about I'm kind of going through it as we're talking, but I think there's something important about every one of these songs. I think they offer something that they all offer something a unique part of this story.
So there's 25 songs. They're all so interesting. I mean, so when we first conceptualized this, conceived of this, in my mind, I was like, oh, Simon and Garfunkel. I mean, so there were all these
Mm,
songs that have America in the title that kind of came up immediately. And some of
mm,
them, we just didn't use. We do talk about America from West Side Story, in addition to Somewhere from the
mhm.
show. But so Simon and Garfunkel's America came to mind immediately, just because as a kid, I mean that was actually the first concert I ever went to was Simon and Garfunkel
Really?
at Dodger Stadium with my family. um, but
Wow.
and that song I think is it, it's talking about the, looking for America. They walked on to look for America, and then they're on a, it's such an evocative song just in terms of
Mm,
songwriting because you have this couple on a bus and all these observations they're making. But it kind of spoke to me about the idea of the promise of America, maybe kind of unrealized. I mean, they haven't actually
mm,
feel like they've arrived yet, but they're kind of crossing the country um,
mm.
and so I like that entry. It also that entry is largely about Bridge Over Troubled Water, which is also I think a really powerful song.
Definitely.
And interesting in that entry too, I learned that I mean even though I'm such a big fan, like I didn't realize that um, I think it was right before that album came out, Bridge Over Troubled Water. Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon really had he made this kind of documentary. directed by Charles Grodin for some reason. I'm not sure
Really?
why. Well, the story was that Art Garfunkel was they were making a film of Catch-22. He was in Catch-22 and with Charles Grodin, and somehow that led to Charles Grodin directing this show that it premiered on network TV, and I'm forgetting, it was something like Simon and Garfunkel's America. And it was like a
Cool.
documentary showing them in the studio and kind of recording
Mm,
songs and things like that. But then intercut, Paul Simon wanted to kind of capture America at that time. This was
mm,
1972, I believe. And so it was showing like anti-war protesters sort of being roughed up by cops, and it was showing dilapidated
mm.
neighborhoods. And it was, um, and I guess it was kind of, it bombed. I mean, it was,
Wow.
not well received.
Mm,
And interestingly, the person who wrote this entry, Mike Stein, talks about that was on the eve of the first draft. They would, for Vietnam, they would read the names off people's numbers.
mm.
They would read it like on the
Yeah.
radio and TV. And
Yeah.
so I don't know that I'm kind of not doing justice to that entry. You should
No,
read it, but so that was a really
that's
fascinating one for me.
yeah, that's interesting too. Because I mean, this I feel like the earliest piece in this song is 1908's "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," which is really all about longing to belong. And in a sense,
Mhm.
this is still searching for that. It's still expressing that longing in its own way, and it's part of the story too. Reminded me of what we spoke about in the magazine about Louis Armstrong with "What a Wonderful World," because
Mhm.
that was during a period of a lot of turmoil, and he kind of got some people gave him a hard time for that song. What are you talking, and he said it is a wonderful world. It's just what we're doing to what people are doing to
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess I would tell readers too, like some of the songs are, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about are kind of nuanced and layered,
Right.
and kind of there are a lot of kind of myth busting and truth telling, all this stuff. But there are songs on our
Mm,
list that are just kind of straight up, I think, affirmative. I mean, like
yeah.
"Free to Be You and Me" is a really
Hmm.
great one, and "I Am Woman," is a very feminist
Mm,
anthem. And what else? Well, anyway, um, I guess too, what's interesting is what didn't make the list, and
that's true.
I was when you're talking about something that's iconic. I mean, because we did kind of brainstorm of like more contemporary artists. Who could we
Hmm.
include who's Jewish artists who are making music right now. I don't think
Hmm.
those songs have had enough time to become iconic, and so in some ways it just didn't always make sense.
Right.
But so like I mean, people, when I first told my husband about this, he's like, "Oh, you got to include Kiss." And
Mm.
it's like everybody has their own idea of what sort of the iconic songs written
Right.
by Jewish
Right.
artists are. But so what would you say is the song that got left off that you kind of wish hadn't been?
Well, I think there's something I don't know if it's one song, but it's something written by Dorothy Fields. She wrote "The Way You Look Tonight" and "On the Sunny Side of the Street." I just feel like so much of this Jewish perspective in American music is like staying hopeful and like look on the sun stuff like that. And I think I love and I honestly I had started writing a little bit about the way you look tonight, and it never occurred to me that the first lyric of that song is someday when I'm awfully low. So it's
Mm,
basically and the song is taking place in a moment where they're like at a dance having a beautiful time together, but she's
mhm.
already assuming that this is going to end, and I and
Yeah.
but it's sad that it's going to end, but this moment, the memory of this moment is giving her hope. And so I just love how there's a lot of the stuff. She was a lyricist, and a lot of the stuff she wrote, it kind of, there's something sad that's obviously going to happen, but
Hmm.
I gotta stay sunny side, or on the sunny
Yeah.
side of the street was her. I just love that message that she kind of brought to the music. So I'd say one of those two songs for me.
Uh-huh.
What about you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think I mean, I love that song, but yeah, "Someday when I'm awfully low." It's like,
Yeah, it's a weird way to, like, if you were gonna sing, your husband, like, say I wrote you a love song, and you start with that lyric, it's kind of
right,
what.
right. I know you're going to leave me someday, but That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at kind of our list of songs that, because in some cases there were artists that, or Jewish songwriters and performers who, and again we really were limiting this to to writers, and so if they were
Hmm.
also the performer, then great. But um, anyway, I'm thinking of like Neil Diamond and
Mm.
Randy Newman and
Yeah.
who else? Well, Leonard Cohen, it was
Mm.
someone who was talked about a lot. Phil Oakes, Arlo Guthrie. So there's
Hmm.
certain artists, and we really wanted to think about including them. And then there just wasn't a specific song in some cases that we
Right.
felt like was the song.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I think I wanted to put the Beastie Boys on. Well, you
Right.
and
Yeah.
Sarah and I also we kind of wanted to get the Beastie Boys on there for some reason. It just felt like they were part of the Jewish American music story.
Yeah.
And but again, that one was kind of interesting. I don't I have mixed feelings about it because and just to give people an idea of the work that went into this. I mean, sometimes we would talk to people about a certain song and it just kind of then it hit a dead end because with that one specifically, a couple of people I spoke to said, yeah, it was it was the Beastie Boys song, "You Got
Fight
to
for your
Fight for
right.
Your Right to Party," which this is not like a deep song, and it turned out that those early songs of the Beastie Boys were sort of they had some misogyny and
Right.
um, but what I thought was sort of interesting about that, if we had included it, we could have kind of told a story about kind of their consciousness being raised and kind of
Mm.
as they, but that wasn't really the point of this, was to trace an artist's individual trajectory in terms of
Right.
their growth. But so that one was, I don't know, I kind of wanted to get that on there.
Hmm.
There was another interesting one called Bread and Roses that
Oh yeah.
was a poem written by a Jewish poet in 1912 that became kind of an anthem. This idea of bread and roses, that it was kind of a labor song that became associated
Mm.
with also the suffrage movement and labor. And interestingly, it was set to music in 1975 by I'm writing Mimi Farina, who was Joan Baez's sister, and then also had been performed by Judy Collins. So it had these kind of
Mm.
layers, and then recently it was actually performed at Mamdani's inauguration. So
Really?
it seemed
Oh.
like there was such an interesting story to tell there about this song, and the thing is, it's not like a really popular song. It's not a song that
Right.
people know. And so that one, that I would have liked to have kind of explored that one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, I mean, with Randy Newman, there's so many great. He really, to me, he reflects so much of the social justice thing. But some of his songs that
mhm,
are the most social justice are the least known. I feel so. It was hard to, you
yeah,
know, we didn't have too much to say about "You've Got a Friend in Me," but Louisiana 1927, we would have. But is that an icon?
yeah,
What is iconic? What does it mean to be an iconic song?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a challenge. Yeah, but I'm just glad we didn't go with the 25 greatest Jewish composed songs or whatever. Is that
Right.
what?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think this is all supposed to be entertaining and kind of thought-provoking and also just listenable too,
Yeah, but also in the tradition of the Jewish tradition, arguing and making your own, forming your own opinions. That's all part of this.
hmm
When I have a conversation with someone around what is Jewish music, they ask me the question. To me,
uh-huh,
if they leave that conversation with more questions than answers, I feel like I did my job, and that's a Jewish
uh-huh.
thing. And I feel like with this too. I mean, hopefully, people will resonate with the things we wrote about and shared. But
hmm
if they feel a little differently, that's welcomed, right? In a way.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
with these, we always love to publish letters and maybe even in
Mm.
like an addendum. But I guess what I would ask people is read the whole thing first. Like read
Yeah.
it, and then let us know who we missed. And I
Hmm.
only say that it's not like an admonishment, but just because it's so rich. And then we'd love to hear about who you would have picked and which song. So yeah, we really encourage people to write to editor@momentmag.com. Uh,
Yeah. I guess I'll just add too. One of the other things we ran into, just because there might be another song that's Jewish composed that speaks greatly to social justice or something. But occasionally there were times when we were in the process and we realized that a certain song that we may have put in spoke to something we had already written about on
Hmm.
other songs a few times. So we also had to eliminate some songs for that reason. So I'm just sharing that
Right.
because I'm sure someone would say, "Well, this song has the social some sort of message. How could you leave that song out?" A lot of times we had to, or not had to, but it just made more
Yeah,
sense to vary things up.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really
That's
good
it.
point. Yeah, you couldn't have all sort of depression era songs. um, but yeah, well, I think this has been really fun,
It's
and
been so fun. Oh my gosh.
for a while, it was funny because for a while, like for a good 2 days, I had tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree stuck in my head, and
Oh
some of
yeah.
these, but now it's time to listen to, I guess, maybe new music and
Oh yeah. Well, we're
speaking
working on
of,
the.
are you performing? You doing
Yeah.
some performances?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of performing and recording these days, and yeah, just really random. I just recorded a solo piano Grateful Dead album. I don't know how much Jewish material's in there, but there's something, and yeah, so yeah, so I'm just traveling around and playing, and this has
That's
been one
great.
of the, it's being a musician. It's always there's so many different parts of working in music and but writing is just such a joy for me and this has just
Hmm.
been such a treat to be a part of, so thank you
Yeah.
for having me and for everything. Really.
Yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
uh,
that's great.